presented by the League of Women Voters, St. Petersburg area, and the League of Women Voters, North Pinellas County. The series gives you the opportunity as a voter to get to know the candidates. The League of Women Voters is celebrating 100 years of informing voters and defending democracy. Please visit PinellasVoterGuide.com for complete and unbiased information on voting and candidates. Tonight, the program is split into two segments. The first is a forum for the Supervisor of Election Candidates. The second program will begin in about 15 minutes, and we will invite you to provide live questions on Facebook Live and YouTube Live. Our media partner for the entire 5-part series has been St. Pete Catalyst. We are grateful for the donation of their time and expertise to make these live and virtual forums possible. We couldn't do this without the support of our community co-sponsors. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I want to personally thank them for their contributions. And that includes the ACLU Florida Pinellas chapter, the National Organization for Women, Pinellas County and West Pinellas chapters, the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg Center for Civic Engagement, the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg campus, and the Clearwater Neighborhoods Coalitions. There are 2 candidates for the Supervisor of Elections in Pinellas County. The League's format is intended to offer a fair representation of the candidates. If they do not appear personally, they're offered the opportunity to provide some comment either personally or by video. One of the candidates tonight, candidate Julie Marcus, did not respond to our request to participate in the forum. However, candidate Ed Helm prepared a statement. Please welcome candidate Helm.
Hi, my name is Dan Helm. Ed Helm is my father. It sometimes happens that we get confused, but I welcome, thank you for the opportunity, League of Women Voters. I'm Dan Helm. I'm your candidate for Supervisor of Elections. Part of this job is showing up. Part of it is showing up to be a leader. I saw and got involved in this race after the disruption I saw happen in March. We not only had a pandemic and a crisis that was taking thousands of lives, we also had a crisis of leadership. And so we needed people to step up. The League has been around 100 years, right? It's phenomenal the work in a nonpartisan way that the League does to provide information to voters and been an advocate for voting rights and voting issues. I commend the League. I celebrate with you the 100 years. This is a group that grew out of the 19th Amendment, right? Also, we celebrate the 19th Amendment and its passage this 100 years. I want to see 100% participation for voting. That's the goal of the supervisor elections, that we all have the knowledge to be able to participate safely and accurately in our elections. So I'm running on a platform called SAFE. I want to keep voting safe in Pinellas. SAFE is an acronym. It stands for Secure, Accessible, Fair Elections. Secure from threats of COVID. We want to make sure that our voters are safe and we're practicing good CDC guidelines. That means for you as the voter, the safest way to vote this cycle is vote by mail. I would encourage you to request that vote by mail ballot. You can do so now. It's safe and secure. There's barcodes, there's signature matching. And the best part of it is you can track it the whole way. So go to the website, you can track when it's been sent to you, as well as when it's been received to be processed. That means they've received it and it should be good to go to be counted. Safe from the threats of hurricanes. You know, we are in the midst of a hurricane season. We've reached the Greek alphabet in hurricanes. Part of the supervised elections job is to protect against redundancy and create redundancy in the system to protect against disruption that might happen because of hurricanes, other things that might affect us on election day. So having plans in place that protect all voters, whether it's a hurricane, whether it's a COVID, or also protect us from cybersecurity. It's something that I'm passionate about. I grew up with computers. I want to make sure that the systems are safe and secure. We know that in 2016, there were election systems in Florida that were hacked, right? That cannot happen in Pinellas. When I look at our website currently, I don't see somebody that recognizes the use of technology and how best to use technology And so I worry a little bit that we're not doing all we can for cybersecurity. I will up that game, right? I have the experience and knowledge from a business education company, knowing the importance of technology in the 21st century. So safe, that's the S-A, accessible. I want to make voting much more accessible than it is Pinellas. This really comes down to early voting. Early voting is something that's important to me. I grew up in Pinellas. I attended local public schools before going to the University of Florida and finally Emory Law School. After law school, I got involved in voter protection, and it was then that I saw how awesome early voting can be. This is a 2-week window that you can have where you can vote early, meaning you can vote and cast your ballot on the weekend, after work. You can even check in other counties, whether it's green, orange, or red, see what the line's like so you don't have to wait in line. This is good for people that might work on election day, but they have this opportunity to otherwise go to the polls. But you can't go to the polls if there are no locations. And so Pinellas historically has only had 3 early voting locations. That's not right. That's not fair. Our neighbor Hillsborough has 26 early voting locations. Pasco, half of our population size, has 11 early voting locations. How many does Pinellas typically have? Just 3. That's not right. That's not good for the voters. We're required to have early voting. We should support early voting, give people more access. It allows people to participate in the process. It's good for democracy. We will have 5 locations this time. I'm saddened to say that the Tropicana field, even though is offered to be used as an early voting location, is not going to be used as an early voting location. It would be great. It's a big location, great for social distancing. One person makes this decision. Who that person is matters. It really impacts your ability to cast your ballot safely and securely. Additionally, I want to expand postage paid on vote by mail. It will be paid under my administration forever. You won't have to worry about a stamp, won't leave it on the dresser. You can just put it back in the mail, know they'll get back to us. So that's accessibility, also complying with ADA guidelines, making sure that we're complying with all the appropriate law dealing with accessibility. F, S-A-F-E. So F is fairness, fair and transparent systems. The biggest case I have here is I'm a lawyer. I am a rule follower. I want everybody to follow the rules, whether it's me suing a Democrat for the violations that happened in 2018. I saw that there was a problem. I saw the rules were not being followed, and I said, what can I do? And so I went into the Supervisor of Elections office and I said, hey, listen, I'm just a guy that loves this voting thing. Will you look at this? This is the way the statute reads, and this is what you're doing that's wrong. And they said, we don't agree. If you got a problem with it, sue us, buddy. And I said, well, I'm a lawyer, and so I will sue you. And they said, all right, go ahead. And I did, and I won the lawsuit. They've started following the law, but it took me as an individual getting the change to happen. I'll tell you, frankly, there are some things that disturb me about our current supervisor elections that, I don't want to have to sue. I'd rather just be in the position to follow the law. That's the way government should work. They should follow their own rules. My job is not to create rules out of thin air. It's to follow the statutory rules. So our current supervisor elections is, in fact, multiple litigation, multiple lawsuits, one of which is where she's literally shredding ballots. And I say that to alarm you. There's a digital record that's automatically created when the paper ballots go into the machine. The machine are optical scanners, and they take a picture of that ballot. That digital ballot in Pinellas is destroyed upon creation without explanation. So Julie Marcus is shredding ballots. She's shredding this digital record, which my understanding of the law is that election data should be stored for 22 months for a federal election, a year for state election. You should not destroy the digital record the way that we do. The manufacturer recommends that you store these images. The default settings on the machine is store all these images. 30 counties in Florida automatically store these images. Starting in 2021, we will be able to use these images for recounts. The digital images are allowed to be used for recounts. Lots of other counties use it for audit purposes, open, transparent elections, fair systems. For some reason, our supervisor of elections in Pinellas County destroys this, shreds the digital record without explanation. I joined a lawsuit as a plaintiff because this needs to change. One person makes a decision. It's bad for democracy. We should not be destroying that. We should keep that record. So I'm going to implement other fair systems. I want the information from our voters to come both ways, right? So if you guys have a problem, you need to be able to come and trust the supervisor elections, they need to show up to things, like when the League of Women Voters has an opportunity to host you as a forum. You show up and you answer questions that the voters might have, because they're doing a nonpartisan way. They're doing a public service. Again, they've been doing this good public service for 100 years. 411 Vote is a great resource that gives good information about the candidates in a nonpartisan way. I encourage all of you to do that. So I want to keep elections safe in Pinellas, secure, accessible, fair elections, because every vote counts. Your vote counts. Even if you're not voting for me, I want you to participate in the process. Request your vote by mail ballot. Learn what it is to be a good voter. Get educated. I'm going to make some changes to the office. I think I can do a better job. I have the experience of dealing with this. I'm passionate about voting rights. I want to make sure your voice is heard. I'm Dan Helm. I'm going to keep voting safe in Pinellas. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Dan Helm. Now it's time for our live questions and answers segment. The topic is voting. There's a lot of information and misinformation on voting, and we want to respond to your concerns and your questions. Please send us your questions by Facebook Live or YouTube Live. Before we start, and to give you time to submit your questions, we have a short musical interlude. Voice Your Vote 2020. Stay with us for your live questions.
Has come for your voice to be heard. Don't be quiet like a mouse. You gotta sing like a bird. Cast your vote. You got some options today. Grab your families and friends and let's lead the way. Oh. For the happy and early bird, by mail may be preferred. At the polls on November 3rd. Either way, make your voice heard. For the happy and early bird, by mail may be preferred. At the polls on November 3rd. Either way, make your voice heard.
One voice can be a lonely sound, a cry in the distance, a whimper of doubt, yeah. We'll raise it up and we can gather a crowd where we all speak up together. They can't hold us down. Here are your options. What I've heard, bring an early bird. By mail may be preferred. At the polls on November 3rd. Either way, make your voice heard.
Tu voto ven hazlo por el correo temprano. 3 de noviembre es el último día de votar. What do you need at a voting site? Just be a listener, licensed the or Florida ID, student ID with a card or a signature. The more visitors vote, the less prisoners be filled like. So fulfilled like, hand mail in, your vote so the member there can feel right. Oh, yeah.
What I've heard, bring an early bird.
By mail may be preferred.
At the polls on November 3rd.
Either way, make your voice heard. Tu voto ven hazlo por el correo temprano. 3 de noviembre es el último día de votar. Protesting in the streets, yelling we want change, makes it loud and clear. There are things to rearrange. Register to vote now. Don't wait another day. Put the lawmakers in office who hear what we say. Go to the website voiceyourvote2020.com.
Welcome back. Now I'd like to introduce our expert panelists. I didn't have any choice in the selection, but if I had to choose two people who were knowledgeable about voting and the voting process, these are the same two people I would have chosen. First, I'd like to introduce Lindsay Grove. She's the president of the League of Women Voters, St. Petersburg. Amy Keith is the second vice president of the League of Women Voters, St. Petersburg area. And she's the co-lead of the voter services team and also the election protection program. So we're going to go to those questions in just a minute. And in between questions and answers, that we will provide you some testimonials so that you can understand what other people feel when they're voting and why they vote. But before I do that, I would like to just ask a quick question on my own. I'm going to take advantage of my position here. You know, the supervisor of elections is one of those submarine positions that nobody hears anything about, but it's really, really key to the entire process. Lindsay, if you don't mind me asking, can you tell me a little bit about the responsibilities of the supervisor of elections?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, the name implies that they supervise elections, but there's a lot more to what they do. They update voter information and registration information. They enter new voter registrations into the statewide voter registration system. They act as the official custodian of documents related to the registration of electors and changes in voter registration status of electors. They're also able to appoint deputy supervisors who also help them with supervisor duties. The deputies and the supervisor are responsible for making sure everything goes through the office or relates to elections complies with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the National Voter Registration Act of 1993, and the Help America Vote Act of 2002. The list is very long, and I highly recommend folks, look online. Ballotopedia actually has all of the duties and responsibilities of the Supervisor of Elections office, as well as their term limits.
Okay, thank you very much. And now let's go to the questions. So the first question I have right now, and I'm going to ask Amy this question, how do I register to vote? How do I go about going through that process?
Well, first of all, you have to register to vote by October 5th of this year. And you can register to vote. I'm not sure if my connection is strong enough right now, but you can register to vote online if you have a Florida driver's license. If you don't have a Florida driver's license, you can actually print out the voter registration form and mail it back, or you can go in person to one of the Supervisor of Elections offices. You can do all of this at votepinellas.com.
Okay, thanks so much. And where would I find addresses to drop those off?
So on the back of the voter registration form is actually the address of every supervisor of elections in the state of Florida, so that you can mail it to the one in your county. And at votepinellas.com, you can find the addresses for the supervisor of elections offices here in Pinellas County. We have 3 offices in the county.
Okay. So Lindsay, let's say, for example, I can't get the day off for voting in person. Where can I drop off a mail-in ballot?
That's a great question. So if you want to drop off your mail-in ballot, obviously you can send it in the mail. And we, definitely say if you want to send it through the mail, do it as early as possible, just to make sure that you can, that it gets there in time. And you can also track that online. You can track that on votepinellas.com as well. There are 25 secure drop-off locations across the county, which you can see on the same website. And on the day of the election, the only place that you can drop off your mail-in ballot is at a supervisor of elections office. And just as Amy said, there are 3 of those in Pinellas County.
And could you give me that website one more time, please?
Sure. It's votepinellas.com.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, I hear that mail-in ballots are either counted last and only in the event of the tie. Can you help me demystify that a little bit? Is that true?
That is not true. So mail ballots are going to be counted during the 3 weeks before Election Day as they start coming in. A mail ballots actually on election night, some of the first results you're seeing are actually our mail ballots that are being, they're being released there because we can count them earlier. And, we do like to remind people that the earlier you get it in, the longer that the supervisor of elections really has to to count those for us.
All right, thanks very much. I'd like to take this opportunity right now to share with our audience a testimonial of one of our local residents here in Pinellas County. So let's go to that testimonial.
Hi, my name is Will Shedden. I'm the current student government president down at Eckerd College in South St. Pete. I'm actually a lifelong St. Pete native, and I'm excited to be talking to you today about the importance of voting, the importance of youth voting, and why voting by mail is going to be critical to safe voting this election. So I actually voted for the first time by mail during the primary this year, and I want to say it's a heck of a lot easier than I think in a lot of other places. I think Pinellas County does a fantastic job in streamlining the application process, the mailing process, and the sending back and everything. It's just a couple buttons you have to click on the Vote Pinellas website, and then they send you the ballot, you fill it out, put it back in the envelope, sign it, and send it away. And that's all you need to do. You can also drop it off at a lot of the different ballot drop locations I know that are around St. Pete and around Pinellas County. And I've actually also worked, this is a changing tack a little bit, I've also worked to get the youth vote to turn out at Eckerd College these past few years. And I want to say I've been heartened by the amount of participation in the political process that has occurred by the young people in St. Pete and in Pinellas County. And I think we need to keep that momentum moving forward. And voting is the best way to get our voice heard. It's the best way to be understood by politicians and those that are in office and those that hold power. And it's the way to make sure that our issues, the ones we care about, are addressed. I think these are all fantastic reasons to vote, and I cannot wait to see a high voter turnout this November. Thank you so much, and thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for having me speak to y'all.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Let me continue on with a few other questions now. Amy, what exactly is early voting, and what's the time frame of that?
Early voting is just regular voting that you do early. Shocking to say. Basically, for early voting, it's going to open on October 19th. It's going to be open from October 19th to November 1st, every day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You can vote at any early voting location in Pinellas County, regardless of where you live in the county. We will have 5 early voting locations for the November election. Those 5 locations are the 3 Supervisor of Elections offices, as well as SPC All-State Center down in South County and the Center of Palm Harbor up in North County. And you can find all those details on votepinellas.com, or you can call 727-464-VOTE to reach the Supervisor of Elections office and find the early voting location nearest you.
And would you mind just repeating the 2 outlier locations that broke up just a little bit for me, so maybe you clarify that too?
Sure, that was SPC All-State Center in South County and the Center of Palm Harbor in North County. And if you are going to early vote, remember that you need to bring ID.
Okay, great. Thanks for that clarification. Now, Lindsay, if I do vote early or I vote by mail, is there any way that I can ensure that my ballot was received, and how do I go about finding that out?
Sure, that's a great question. You can actually track your ballot online at votepinellas.com. I did it in the last primary, and it was super easy. One thing to keep in mind is that it will let you know when your ballot has been received, and it won't say it's been counted until after the day of the election. So a lot of people got hung up on that during the primary, but you can actually track your ballot online, which is awesome.
Thank you. And now I have a question now from a listener, Christopher Lurbs. Is the security privacy inner envelope required for mail-in ballots in Florida? Pennsylvania has indicated that they will disqualify ballots. Amy, do you have any input on that?
So I don't know the exact answer to that, but we will definitely find out. We'll get that answer on our Facebook page. I can tell you that with vote by mail, of course, we know that it's really important to read instructions in that ballot, and to make sure that you follow them and do put your ballot into that secrecy sleeve. And remember to put it into the return envelope and sign it. But we'll get back to you on the specifics of that question.
Okay, thank you very much. Lindsay, can you give me a little idea of how I can find out more information about the candidates or ballot issues?
Sure. The league has been providing a nonpartisan candidate, basically a voter guide for decades now. And you can actually go to pinellasvoterguide.com, and that will provide you candidates all the way from the federal level down to the local level, as well as information about amendments and other ballot initiatives. There's also Vote 411, and that will, you just input your address, and that'll give you all of the nonpartisan voter information that you need to match your ballot.
And listener Joe Hamilton asks, how can I be sure that my vote is counted? Lindsay?
So, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Amy, go ahead.
Go ahead, Amy.
That's okay. I was going to say, as Lindsay had just said, you can actually track your ballot if you vote by mail. You can go to votepinellas.com, look under the mail ballot menu, and check the status of your ballot, and that'll show you if it's been received. If it says received, then your ballot is good to go, and then it'll say counted after Election Day. And the important thing to know is that the Supervisor of Elections is legally obligated to let you know if there's a problem with your ballot, and then you have until 5 p.m. on Thursday, November 5th, to fix that problem with your ballot.
And you make a really good point, because I think if you're watching the national news, there's a lot of confusion, and we're talking specifically about the state of Florida and what applies to everybody in this county, right?
Yes.
All right. I'd like to take this opportunity to go ahead and have another testimonial from one of our residents here in Pinellas County.
You know, the saying goes, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And to me, if you really want to make a difference, it's about voting. It's about making a statement about what you stand for. Voting is extremely crucial when we have 300+ million people in the United States of America. We become more united when many, many voices align together. I've been mailing in my vote for quite some time now. It's so simple, it's so easy, and you can believe in the process because it works. And so let's get those votes in early, and it's very crucial because, again, we can't sit on the sidelines and complain unless we're willing to be a voice about change. This could be the year and the time that your vote matters more than anything. So when it comes to voting, I say to myself, do I matter? You bet. So therefore, I make sure to put my name, my email address on that sheet of paper. And I urge you to do the same. Bless you.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty important lesson, that if you are not part of the solution, then you have no right to complain about the situation. So I think that's a great little message to get out and vote. Lindsay, if I go to vote and I don't have a Florida driver's license, what kind of identification can I use?
That's a great question. There are actually 12 different forms of acceptable ID. And if you'd like a list of all the different forms of ID, you can go to votepinellas.com, and there is an entire list. But really the thing to remember is that you have to have a valid photo and signature for your form of ID, which is, again, if you want an entire list of all 12 valid forms of ID, you can go to votepinellas.com.
But if I can just pick into that just a little more detail, a Florida ID card, maybe a passport would be suitable, correct?
Yep.
Can you give me maybe one or two other common ones?
Sure. If you're a veteran, you can use your VA card. If you're a student, you can use your student ID. So, really all of these are forms of ID, again, that have a photo as well as a signature on the back.
Okay, that's great. That's kind of what I was looking for. I think in some cases people are worried about not having the correct ID, or if they don't have specifically a driver's license, they feel like they can't vote at all. So I'm glad
Sure.
they have options there. Okay, thank you. Now, I think there are a lot of people out there. They are not just worried about voting, but they're worried about their votes getting counted on time. And there seems to be a lot of extenuating circumstances going on right now. What's the process to ensure that the ballots are counted in a timely manner? What's that process like?
So on
I'm sorry,
election
Amy.
night, I know
I'm
that.
so,
Oh,
I'm so
sorry.
sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Amy, please.
So on election night, I know we're very used to seeing results on election night, but those are actually preliminary results. And we have to remember that there are ballots, like for our military who are stationed overseas, they have an additional 10 days for their overseas ballots to be returned. So we can expect for sure that if we have a lot of mail ballots that are returned right before election day or on election day, and we have those overseas ballots, that the results may take some time. So I think that this year, especially if we're going to have high turnout and lots of mail voting, it may take more time before we even have those preliminary results. But election night results are always only preliminary. The unofficial results come out a few days later, and the official certified results come out a couple weeks after that. So really, we have a process to make sure that every vote is counted, and to make sure that that count is accurate and complete. And that is a process. And it is actually a publicly observable process. It's not behind closed doors. It's a process that we as the public have observation and transparency into.
Well, I've heard of that. What does that mean? Are you allowed to go into the place where they're actually counting ballots? Is there like a viewing area?
Yeah, there is actually a little glass room, and you can watch them put the ballots through the machine, and you can actually watch the canvassing board, look at different ballots that might be, where they're not sure about the signature and things like that. You can actually watch them make those decisions.
Hmm. Well, it's one of those things I've heard about, but I didn't realize that I could actually participate in as a citizen. That's very interesting. Lindsay, what is a provisional ballot, and why would anybody ever use one? What is that exactly?
So a provisional ballot is used when, somebody comes in with the wrong form of ID, or maybe there's some sort of issue with their voter registration. And essentially what a provisional ballot does is it holds your place in line, right? Until you can, what we call cure your ballot. Basically work out whatever the issue is. But you can cast a provisional ballot to sort of hold your place in line until, again, you can, do what you need to do to make sure that your ballot is cured and then counted.
And then is that at the polling area? Is that where you do a provisional ballot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, you do
Is
it
that the only
right.
place?
If it, that's actually a really good question. I would just, Amy, do you have
The connection cut out for a second, so I didn't hear that follow-up.
Oh,
Well, I'll repeat the question quickly. So we're talking about provisional ballots, and Lindsay gave the example of somebody's at a polling station and perhaps they don't have a valid ID, or for some reason they can't vote in what would be considered the proper way. Then they might be given a provisional ballot with the opportunity then to go back and redo that. Is that the only time that you use a provisional ballot, or are there other? Can you do that early voting also?
Yes, you would be given a provisional ballot at early voting, and you'd be giving a provisional ballot. So if you're at the polling place and you are unable to cast a regular ballot for some reason, you'll get a provisional ballot, which is just like a regular ballot. It goes in an envelope and you'll sign it. And then you have until 5 p.m. on the Thursday after Election Day to fix whatever the problem was with that ballot, and maybe send in some additional documentation. The poll worker will tell you what you need to do to fix it, and you just have to fix it by 5 p.m. on the Thursday after Election Day to make sure your vote is counted.
And then just to be clear, that they can then fix that ballot at any office for the supervisor of elections, is that correct?
Some things can actually be fixed by sending documentation by email. So the poll workers will give you the instructions for what you need to do or where you need to go to fix it.
That's great. All right, thank you so much for that. And now I'd like to take the opportunity to follow up with another testimonial for one of our community members here in Pinellas County.
Hello, friends. I'm Dr. Sean E. Thomas, student pastor at Mount Zion Progressive Church in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm here to just talk about why voting is important. As an African-American male in this country, I am often reminded of the severe sacrifices that was made so that I would have the right to vote. For a long time in this country, people of color did not enjoy that right. But because some people decided to give of themselves, they had dogs sicked on them, water holes sprayed on them. There were houses that were bombed, churches that were bombed. And there were others who gave the ultimate sacrifice, literally died so that I can enjoy this right. I think about people like my grandfather who raised me. He was born in 1916. So for a great part of his life, he did not have the right to vote. Then I think about the stories of how proud he was when he finally gained that right to vote, and how every time an election came up, he exercised that right. Not only did he do it, but he instilled in his children and his grandchildren how important it is to participate in this process. You have to do it. There has been so great a price paid so that we can vote. So I want to remind you that you must register to vote by October 5th for the November 3rd election. Again, you must register to vote by October 5th for the November 3rd election. However you must vote, get out and vote. You can do your mail-in ballot if you feel safer doing that in the time of coronavirus. I know for me, I'm going to do it the old school way. I'm going to wake up early in the morning, go to the voting poll, and cast my vote. However you do it, by train, plane, or automobile, if you have to walk to the ballot booth, get out and vote, vote, vote. Blessings. Peace.
I think the best part of these testimonies is how heartfelt they are, and you really know the people from their stories and why they think voting is important. So I love having these testimonies in this program. Now, I have a voting nerd question, so I'm going to direct this to Amy. So in the national dialogue, you're hearing a lot of discussions about absentee voting and mail-in voting. Is there really a practical difference? Why is that in the conversation right now, do you think?
In Florida, there's actually no difference. We used to call it absentee voting. Now we call it mail-in voting. I would say that, although I'm definitely not an election lawyer, I would say that basically some states have what we call no excuse mail-in voting. That's like Florida. You can vote you can vote by mail just because you want to in Florida. And we have other states that have universal mail-in voting where everybody votes by mail. And then you have states where you have to have a reason to vote by mail. And a lot of those states do call it absentee voting. Again, that's anecdotal. I'm not sure if there is a full legal difference, but there is some different ways that we vote by mail, and there's some different systems state by state.
You know, when I was in the military, they called this specifically absentee voting because we weren't in the country for some of those things. I'm just kind of curious if there was any practical difference when the votes got mailed in. They just got mailed in as mailed-in votes, right? So no difference there.
There's no practical difference, although for overseas voters, there is a longer deadline to get your ballot back.
Right. So we have another question from one of our audience members, Mary Ellen Gordon. Will my vote get counted if it's mailed on November 3rd and has that postmarked date? Lindsay?
It unfortunately will not. So you have to make sure that your ballot gets in by election day. And in fact, this is the main reason why mail-in ballots don't get counted, is because they arrive late. So please make sure that you get your ballot in on time. Do not rely on the postmark date. If you didn't get it in time, there are you can drop it off to the supervisor of elections office on the day of the election. So please make sure that you get it in early.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, and just to remind people that you can't drop these at polling stations, even though that would seem like a logical thing. It really has to be to one of the offices of the supervisor of elections, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, Amy, is mail-in voting, is it reliable?
Yes.
Okay, elaborate.
Sorry, mail-in voting has a lot of different security measures where you can, there's buttons on the envelopes that enables you to track your ballot and make sure that you're able to see when it's been sent to you and when it's been received back, also when it's flipped to counted. There is, yeah, I think both, both liberal and conservative researchers have found very, very little evidence of, things like voting fraud and stuff like that in the United States. And with mail ballots as well, like any issues like that are very, very low. The biggest, most important thing is that you follow the directions, that you sign your ballot envelope, put your phone number and email on it so they can contact you if there's a problem, and get it in by November 3rd. That's the biggest thing you can do to protect your mail ballot.
We do have another question from the audience, but before I do that, I would like just to, since you mentioned voter fraud, Lindsay, do you have any insight in terms of voting by mail or even voting in person? Do you have any concerns about that?
I do not. I have voted in person and by mail, and it has been secure. And in fact, this is something that is really important to us because we want to make sure that voters are voting with confidence. It is reliable and secure whether you vote by mail or in person. It's just a matter of making sure you get your butt there in time, and making time to be there, and to get that sticker. So it's really, really important. And, I hope that folks really feel confident when they go and cast their ballot this year.
And audience member Betsy Wells asks, how do I know where and when I can vote? Amy?
Go to votepinellas.com. You can use, if it's election day, you can use the Find My Precinct tool to tell you where to vote. You should vote in the precinct that matches your current residence, so where you're living on election day. For early voting, as we mentioned, there's 5 early voting sites open from October 19th to November 1st, and you can go to any of those early voting locations in the county, regardless of where you live in the county. Just make sure you're able to show your photo and show your signature on 1 or 2 IDs.
Okay, thanks much. Now, we hear in the news that there are millions of non-citizens voting and that it's causing a lot of confusion in the balloting process. Lindsay, do you have any thoughts on that?
This patently does not happen. To vote in Florida, you must be a U.S. citizen. And there really is no evidence of widespread voting by non-citizens in Florida. And in fact, Florida law classifies false swearing of voter information as a felony. So it's really high risk and low reward. But again, there's virtually no evidence of this happening.
Thank you for that. Now I'd like to just go on to another testimonial and give you an idea of how other citizens here in Pinellas County are feeling about voting.
Hello, I'm Paul Wilborn. I've been an active voter since I was 18, and I really enjoy the voting process. And where we live now in St. Petersburg, I've fallen in love with our little polling place, and I like to see my neighbors there. It's fun to go out. But this year, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to vote early. The office for early voting is right near my office. I can walk to it, and it'll avoid the long lines and having to be with too many folks at my wonderful polling place on election day. So that's what I'm doing. I know a lot of my friends are voting by mail. So whatever you do, just make sure you vote.
I love that he's using voting as a social outlet to see his neighbors. That's pretty great.
Absolutely.
Now, Amy, if the count, well, first off, where can people find the best place to get the results of the elections? Where's the best place to look for that?
I always ballots.com.
Could you say it one more time? You broke up.
I on voteless.com.
And then, is that fairly real time, or what's the updates on that process?
I don't know exactly the timing, but it does seem to be quite real time and stay quite up to date on election day. You can see it changing regularly.
Okay, very good. And then, Lindsay, just as a follow-up there, if it's taking a long time, does that indicate a problem with the process or any kind of malfeasance? What's your thoughts on that?
No, in fact, I think that we should definitely take our time counting the ballots. We, especially with a historic election ahead of us, we know that there's going to be historic turnout. And so we want to, if it is taking a little bit longer than folks are used to, that's okay. We want to make sure that, processes are, done securely, fairly, and, with due diligence. So I would not at all see this as something that would be, an indicator of a problem.
Now, before we go to another testimony, I would like just to throw a quick question over to Amy. This is from one of our audience members, Ingrid Brendenberg. How old do you have to be in the state of Florida to vote?
You have to be 18 years old.
And that's a hard number, 18, right?
Yeah, you can pre-register at 18, and then you will be all set to vote once you turn 18.
And then is that 18, is that on November 3rd, or can you vote early prior to your birthday if the birthday is on November 2nd?
I've never been asked that question, and I think we will post that in the Facebook comments.
Okay. Yeah, I just thought of that myself, because what if your birthday is the day before or day after? You can't do the early voting thing.
Absolutely.
And you also are past the registration time period. All right. And now I'd like to go to another testimony from one of our fellow Pinellas County citizens.
Hi, my name is Lisa Kirshner, and I am a registered voter here in Pinellas County. I am here to talk about mail-in voting because I have been mail-in voting since 2004 when I started to do that out of necessity. I was living and working in Qatar, and I discovered I love mail-in voting because not only do I have the opportunity to skip standing in line, I can also research the issues at my leisure in the comfort of my home. So when I moved to Florida in 2016 and discovered that anyone could vote by mail, I was delighted, and I started voting by mail right away. Here, I can track the status of my ballot online, or you can make a phone call. I can drop off my ballot at a secure box if I don't want to put it in the mail, and those you can look up at the Supervisor of Elections website. And even better, I can still vote in person if I choose, but once again, I'm going to vote by mail so that I'm available to volunteer on Election Day. Thanks.
I'm going to throw this out. This is kind of free. I'm sorry, we do have one more question from the audience. Lots of us just get postcards from the USPS that said you could mail your ballot a week before Election Day and you'd be good to go. Is that accurate, Amy?
I would give it more time than that. I mean, this is your vote, so give it I would say 2 to 3 weeks, or drop it off in person.
Right. And now I'm going to open this up for just general questions, and so it's going to be one to each of you. Lindsay, what is the most important thing that you can share with people that maybe we haven't covered yet? Is there some topic that people ask you about all the time?
That's a really good question. I would say, one of the questions that I get a lot is, what what do some of these local elected officials do? And why should I care? And, we believe that, local officials are the folks that you have the most access to. And actually, a lot of local officials, elected officials, have a lot of impact on our daily lives. And so it's not always about the presidential election. We've got a lot on our ballot this year, tax collector, a supervisor of elections, judgeships. And so voting for those individuals will have a direct impact on the everyday lives of citizens in Pinellas County. And so it's really important to not only vote for those particular elected officials, but also be informed when you go to the ballot box. And that's why we try really, really hard here at the League to put out really good voter information about our candidates through our Pinellas Voter Guide.
Amy, same question to you.
I get a lot of questions about people who need assistance voting. And I think it's really important for people to know that, voting is for everyone. You can vote if you're homeless. You can vote if you're blind. You can vote if you're a student. You can, honestly, it's for all eligible voters. You can actually have anyone you'd like assist you with your ballot if you have a disability. It can be any person of your choosing, as long as it's not your employer or your union representative, or the poll workers at the polls can help you as well. But you have a right to assistance from the person that you choose.
Does that mean they can actually accompany you into the voting booth? Is that okay?
If you choose, yes, they can. And it can even be, if you say you don't speak English with enough confidence that you feel you can read the ballot. If your child does, your child can come into the voting booth with you and help you. The person who assists you does not have to be a registered voter.
Oh, okay. So it could actually be a teenager, for example, who can't vote, but maybe has a better facility with either English or the Spanish ballot entries. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, all voting materials in Pinellas County have to be English and Spanish. But say you speak a different language, English and Spanish, then somebody, yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for that. Well, I'd like to thank you both for the wonderful input and the great resources that you both are to the League of Women Voters. It's been my pleasure to work with you as a board member. I learn something from you guys every time we're together. And it's like I tell people, if you want to get better at something, hang around people that are smarter than you, and both of you are. So thanks so much for teaching me something every month. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Ken. That was really sweet.
Yeah, I really want to.
Well, you're both welcome. And now I'd like just to go ahead and go into my closing remarks. In closing, I just want to remind everybody that there are some important dates coming up. October 5th, you have to register to vote no later than October 5th. And if you need more information, you can always go to the PinellasVotersGuide.com. Another deadline is October 24th, and that's the deadline for your mail-in ballot. We encourage you strongly to try to vote at least 2 weeks ahead of time in order to make sure that the vote gets in and gets processed in a timely manner. You can also drop off your ballot or vote at an early voting location. And again, check the PinellasVotersGuide.com for that information. For early voting, Another thing too, now election day is November 3rd. And I just want you to avoid that rookie mistake and re-emphasize something we said earlier. You cannot drop off your ballot at the polling stations. You cannot do that. I know that you want to vote and you have a ballot in your hand, but you cannot drop it off at the polling stations. But you can drop the ballots off at the Supervisor of Election offices before 7 p.m. Now, a recording of this forum will be, with closed captioning, will be available at the League of Women Voters Facebook page and also on the YouTube page for the League of Women Voters St. Pete area. Next week, I hope you'll join us for the Tax Collector Candidates Forum. Both candidates have agreed to appear and answer questions. On behalf of the League of Women Voters St. Petersburg area and the League of Women Voters North Pinellas County, and our amazing sponsors, I want to thank you for participating with us tonight, watching the program, and we'll see you next week.